welcome to Critical Political. I'm Corey, and you're watching The Political Void. This week, we are delving into the origins of Pride, Stonewall, and what sparks a rebellion. Here we go. Across the United States and globally, June is recognized as LGBTQIA Pride Month, or Gay Pride, a time marked by vibrant parades featuring celebrities and floats, festive workshops, picnics, and parties. These celebrations serve to honor the legacy of LGBTQIA+ individuals while commemorating decades of activism and the persistent quest for equal rights and legal justice for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community. The police raid on the Stonewall Inn during the early hours of June 28, 1969, triggered an uprising from its patrons that the media characterized as a riot. This confrontation initiated 6 days of conflict between law enforcement and LGBTQIA+ protesters, a series of events that would fundamentally reshape LGBTQ+ activism in the United States. Although Stonewall gained significant fame through media reports and gave rise to annual Pride traditions, it was actually the result of years of ongoing activism. Historians suggest that any perceived shift in activism following Stonewall primarily benefited white cisgender individuals, as nonconforming people and people of color had never possessed the ability to hide their marginalized identities. While it was not the inaugural instance of a gay bar raid or community fighting back, the subsequent 6 days left an indelible mark on the nation's political discourse. Though frequently labeled as riots, those who were present at Stonewall have made it clear they favor the terms Stonewall Uprising or Rebellion. Law enforcement originally employed the riot designation as a means to rationalize their application of force. By the way, this video is sponsored by the like button. Click it below to find out more. Crucial to a complete understanding of US LGBTQIA+ history is a recognition of multiple uprisings that occurred prior to Stonewall. These events, often overshadowed by the fame of the 1969 rebellion, involve significant resistance against state-sanctioned harassment, police entrapment, and systemic brutality directed at LGBTQ+ communities. While they had historically garnered less academic and media attention, these earlier acts of defiance are equally vital to the narrative of queer resistance in the United States. In the years leading up to the Stonewall Uprising, Philadelphia activists held annual reminders every July 4th at Independence Hall to protest the denial of basic citizenship rights to gays and lesbians. These demonstrations were strictly regulated. Men were expected to wear business attire. Women were required to wear skirts and blouses. And any public displays of affection were prohibited. Following the events of Stonewall, the Eastern Regional Conference of Homophile Organizations met in Philadelphia on November 2nd, 1969, where they proposed a commemorative march. This event, held on June 28, 1970, to mark the anniversary of the uprising, was designated the Christopher Street Liberation Day March, named for the street at the heart of the New York City's LGBTQ community, where the walk began. While gay power was initially suggested as a slogan, organizers opted for the theme of gay pride, reasoning that while the movement lacked political power, its participants felt a profound sense of pride in their identity. Although participation estimates vary from 1,000 to 20,000 people, the march started with only a few hundred individuals. By the time the procession reached its conclusion at Central Park's Sheep Meadow, 51 blocks to the north, the crowd had grown immensely as supporters joined along the way, chanting, "Say it clear, say it loud, gay is good, gay is proud." The inaugural march honoring Stonewall actually occurred in Chicago, where approximately 150 individuals concluded a week of events just one day prior to the New York City procession. On the same day as the New York event, Los Angeles hosted what was considered the first government permitted parade for gay rights on Hollywood Boulevard, while San Francisco held a gay inn at Golden Gate Park. These early solemn marches gradually transformed into festive celebrations, leading to the tradition of observing Gay Pride or LGBTQ Pride on the final Sunday of June across much of the United States. Over time, this single day of commemoration grew into a month-long observance. Official U.S. government recognition followed, with President Bill Clinton designating June 1999 as Gay and Lesbian Pride Month, President Barack Obama proclaiming June LGBT Pride Month, and President Joe Biden expanding the title to Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer, or LGBTQ Pride Month. While many international cities also hold June celebrations, Pride is observed at various times throughout the year across the globe. Current opposition to Pride often involves conservative virtue signalers who argue that veterans lack a dedicated month of celebration. This claim is disingenuous, given that November is specifically set aside to honor veterans and their sacrifices. Such arguments are either made with full knowledge of this existing recognition or stem from a superficial and uninformed support for the veteran community. Violence and discrimination against LGBTQIA+ individuals are primarily driven by political polarization, harmful societal stereotypes, and deeply ingrained prejudice. Anti-LGBTQIA+ sentiment often manifests in different ways, each stemming from specific social and ideological factors. Misinformation and dehumanizing narratives exert a heavy influence on perpetrators of anti-LGBTQIA+ violence. A primary driver of this hostility is the propagation of fear-based pseudoscience and false stereotypes, such as portraying LGBTQIA+ individuals as predators or threats to children. When a marginalized group is framed as a danger to public health or society, an environment is created where violence is falsely rationalized or justified. Deeply ingrained religious and moral beliefs also underpin opposition to LGBTQIA+ identities and rights. Certain socially conservative and religious doctrines characterize homosexuality and gender nonconformity as fundamentally immoral or disruptive to the traditional family unit. Such ideological rigidity often breeds intense intolerance, leading to the rejection of LGBTQIA+ individuals within their communities, families, and legal systems. Beyond organized rhetoric, extremist groups and political figures frequently use anti-LGBTQIA+ sentiment to mobilize voting bases and resist social progress. By depicting LGBTQIA+ existence as a threat to traditional structures, they transform the community into a political target. This rhetoric can transition from public debate into incitement, encouraging real-world violence and harassment. On an individual level, violent attacks against LGBTQIA+ people, specifically gay men, are often carried out by groups of young men. Research indicates these incidents are frequently thrill-motivated, perpetrated to alleviate boredom, or as a violent means for individuals to prove their masculinity to their peers. In these cases, LGBTQIA+ individuals are targeted because they are perceived as easy or vulnerable targets for violence. The legislative landscape remains fraught with anti-LGBTQIA+ activity as intense civil rights conflicts unfold across the United States and numerous global territories. State legislatures in America continue to introduce hundreds of restrictive measures every year, primarily focusing on limiting access to healthcare, public facilities, and freedom of expression. Data from the American Civil Liberties Union indicates that as of May 29th, 2026, the ACLU is monitoring approximately 530 anti-LGBTQIA+ bills nationwide. These laws cover bans on medically necessary healthcare for transgender people called gender affirming care, placing it under threat nationwide. Bans on trans youths participating in women's sports, criminalizing the use of public restrooms that align with a person's gender identity, and in some cases, invalidating driver's licenses based on someone's gender at birth. Preoccupying oneself with the private lives or anatomy of others, or attempting to police the consensual actions of adults, is a peculiar fixation. It is fundamentally strange to prioritize one's own personal biases over the mental well-being and authenticity of another person. Furthermore, harboring resentment toward the simple act of respecting someone's preferred pronouns is an oddly misplaced concern. Granting others the same rights and status you possess does not diminish your own. Equity is not finite. It's not a commodity like a pie, where one person's gain is another's loss. A significant portion of anti-LGBTQIA+ legislation utilizes a mechanism called creating the other. This psychological and sociological strategy categorizes particular groups as being radically different from established social norms by cultivating an us versus them perspective. This approach erodes empathy and establishes a justification for exclusion and discrimination. Othering involves the belief that individuals who differ from oneself do not deserve equal respect, which can result in the inequitable treatment of entire groups, the erosion of their rights, or even physical harm. These divisions can be based on religion, gender, race, or age. Much of this behavior is influenced by the media we consume. In our attempt to stay informed, we might inadvertently allow external sources to define our fears. Harvey Milk, the first openly gay elected official in California, said, "It takes no compromising to give people their rights. It takes no money to respect the individual. It takes no political deal to give people freedom." Society must move beyond destructive divisions to foster spaces rooted in connection and inclusion. True freedom is impossible so long as any individual faces oppression or exclusion. What can you do? Support the LGBTQIA+ community by opposing restrictive legislation. Exercise your right to vote in favor of equal protections. Participate in public demonstrations and protests. Consider seeking public office to drive systemic progress. Commit to being an active ally rather than being a passive bystander. That's all for this week. Until next time, remember, silence is compliance. Your voice is vital. Stand up, speak out, strike back. They don't know what they started. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, and subscribe. For updates, ring the bell. Your support truly helps the channel. And for those of you kind people who do celebrate it, happy Pride!